slugfest.com. All right, Max, it
All right.
is Monday.
It is.
And you know what Monday is.
All-time matchup Monday, baby.
All-time matchup Monday. And we've
Got a
got
fun one.
we've got a good one here. Where you've got a team that for a long stretch in 2015 we were saying, at least I was. I won't put that on you. Don't you put that evil on me.
Ricky.
We were saying was the best pound-for-pound team in the state this past year.
Yeah.
Going up against one of the teams that if you talk to, I don't want this to sound insulting, if you talk to old-timers, they will say is one of the greatest high school football teams of all time.
Right.
We're talking, of course, the former is the 2015 Canadian Wildcats.
Yeah.
And the latter is the 1973 Big Sandy Wildcats. Who are we? The Wildcats. Who are we going to beat?
The Wildcats.
The Wildcats.
Yeah.
So this is an interesting matchup for a number of reasons. First and foremost is that the era is so different.
Right.
You know, these teams are separated by 40 years. But this 1973 Big Sandy team still holds. Oh, Josh Johnson got hit with a pitch. That's a shame.
That's a Patriots Day move if I ever saw one.
But this still holds a place in a lot of people's heart.
Yeah.
Particularly the defense.
Yeah.
And this Big Sandy defense was out of control. Okay? The guy that everybody points to is Lovie Smith, now the head coach of the Illinois Fighting Illini.
Yes.
My dad will enjoy that one. He was so hyped when he found out that Lovie Smith was going to be their coach. He was so hyped. My dad went to Illinois, if you guys know.
After the last few years for him.
But in 1973, they won their first of 3 consecutive state titles.
Yeah. And look, a lot of purists will tell you, 75 team was way better with Overstreet.
Some will.
Yeah.
When they had David Overstreet as the offensive weapon. Yeah. But Big Sandy's defense in 1973 never allowed more than 6 points in a game. Yeah. I want you to think about that for a moment. They didn't allow more than 6 points in a game, which means that even if they gave up a touchdown, they made sure they didn't get the extra point.
Yeah.
Like, that's really dominant, and Lovie Smith's defense was fantastic. But the offense was also excellent. I think that's something that gets lost when you talk about the 73 Big Sandy team. They ran the ball so well with Bobby Mitchell. More than 3,000 yards, 45 touchdowns. This is a guy who was they had a game plan, which was line it up and run through you, and they did it well. They were a well-oiled machine. This was, when you look at the margins, these are Canadian-type margins, right? And we'll get to the guys in a minute. They beat their average score was 51 to 1.5.
Woo!
Think about that. 51 to 1.5. This is a completely, totally, outrageously dominant team. It was stupid. Yeah. And what I like about this, another thing I like about this comparison, this matchup, is that these are both small teams.
Yes.
Big Sandy won the Class B state championship, which back then was, the small school state championship. This is a really, really outstanding team. And Mike Craven in the article that's going up on TexasFootball.com here in a moment, he makes the point that there's a lot of people out there that think that this 1973 Big Sandy team would have beaten the 1973 John Tyler team, which won the Class A championship,
with Earl Campbell,
which had a guy named Earl Campbell. Yeah. There's that's not an outrageous opinion by any stretch of the imagination.
Shared by many.
This was when you talk about older small school teams, this is between them and the 80s Dangerfield teams, and these were the
hush tones.
Yeah, these are the teams that people go, oh yeah, that Lovie Smith Big Sandy team was pretty special. So then we flash forward 40 years. You and I both get born in that span. Both get born, both start an internet show.
Yeah.
And here is the 2015 Canadian Wildcats. And we have spilled a lot of ink about the 2015 Canadian Wildcats, and I think more will be spilled.
Yep.
Over the next, I think history will treat them very well.
Yeah.
Because this Canadian team was outrageous.
Fire and brimstone, baby.
It was, I remember the story I'll tell about it, and we'll talk at length about the players they had. Tanner Schaefer was incredible. The defense with Corey Chichester was amazing. They had a great running game with Chance Cook. This was a dominant team. But the story that I will always remember about this 2015 Canadian team was going into the state championship game against Refugio. And Refugio's not some team that's going to get wide-eyed and
they've been there
and bushy-tailed.
Yeah.
This is
what they live for.
Yeah. The Refugio, Jason Herring was going to have their team ready to roll. They had an outstanding offense. The defense, I thought, had really hit its stride. This was an excellent Refugio team. And we go up in the press box, and we're sitting there and we're talking with our chums up there in the press box.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of asked the question, anybody give Refugio a chance in this game?
Yeah.
And we all started thinking, and it was the kind of thing that basically we were saying, okay, this has to happen, and this has to happen, and this has to happen, and then maybe this excellent Refugio team has a puncher's chance of hanging with Canadian. They were that dominant.
Yeah.
This offense did whatever it wanted, and they rolled through some of the best teams in the schedule. And that's when what really caught our eye was that they ran through a schedule. They weren't beating spares. I mean, they were drubbing people.
Good teams.
Ended up outscoring teams 820 to 131. And you look at this. I mean, you look at the schedule. Yeah. They beat a good Bushland team. They beat and then they beat Childress. They beat Albany, who played for a title the year before. They beat them 49-0. They beat Wellington, who was a very good team. They beat their rival Stratford on the road by 25. Yeah. That was when, for me, that win over Stratford.
Yeah.
We were like, okay, we think they're pretty good. Okay, they're going to go to Stratford. If they go on the road, and Stratford, by the way, pull up a map. Go on Google Maps and Google Stratford to Canadian. It's like a 2.5-hour drive.
Right. That's their local rival.
If they go on the road and beat a very good Stratford team, then it was like, okay, something special's here. And they didn't just beat them; they mollywopped them. And then they just and no other game was close. No. And then by the way, they beat Stratford again, 31-0. Yeah. They improved on their previous game. Yeah. This team, and then the winner over Crawford in the semifinals, they won their final two games: the semifinal game and the championship. They won by a combined score of 122 to 34.
Yeah. Now let's do a little exercise here. So many football historians in this state would say, well, that Big Sandy team might have beat Earl Campbell and John Tyler, right? Sure. Let's run through the champions above Canadian. Wascom. Who are you picking?
Canadian.
Love you, Wascom, but we're picking Canadian.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go up another one.
Brock. Canadian would have beaten Brock.
Canadian would have beat Brock.
Let's
go up to 4AD2. West Orange Stark.
Canadian would have beat West Orange Stark.
I haven't even close, but I think I got Canadian.
I think, let me put it this way. I think the 2015 Canadian team would have won every state championship before under 5A.
Yeah.
They would have won
I think
the 4A, 3A, and 2A
I think
state
they, at the very least, they're competing for 4AD1.
Mm-hmm. Because at that point, the numbers game.
It's a numbers game, absolutely. But just talent on the field, scheme, matchups.
It was ludicrous. It was. I think that everyone's going to remember this offense, and for good reason. Tanner Schaefer was amazing. Chance Cook was amazing. This whole offense, Braden Galla, amazing. This whole offense was amazing. I think the defense was so underrated. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, think about who broke that game open against Refugio. It was the defense.
Yeah.
I think that this defense is going to go down in history as one of the best. And I think this Canadian team is going to be spoken of in the same hushed tones as we speak of 1973 Big Sandy, which brings us to our matchup: 1973 Big Sandy against 2015 Canadian.
This is probably the least fun I've had picking.
It's not easy because you feel like you're going to disrespect somebody when you don't mean to. To me, I think these two teams in their era are equivalent in their respective era. I think the 1973 Big Sandy team was just as dominant as the 2015 Canadian team relative to their own standards. And here's where I'm going to make some of the Blue Hairs mad. Because I think that football right now is just simply better. I think that the athletes are better. I think that they're faster. I think that they're stronger. I think that they've got better techniques. I think that that coaching has evolved over the past 40 years. That by era alone,
right,
I would take the 2015 Canadian team. Otherwise, if you put them on a level field and you adjust the 73 team for era, then I think it's a tie. Yeah. Basically. But I think this is where the era comes in.
So you and Mike Craven basically thinking about this the same way. Mm-hmm. I am going to go ahead and in my explanation make the assumption that it's a modern day game and Big Sandy has enough time to prepare for this modern offense, right? The size differences, all that stuff. I'm going to give Big Sandy the nod.
Okay.
And I love Canadian.
But Bull, there's a firm, just a fine reason for picking them, which is you just look at the defense and you say, listen, that defense is going to make plays.
Yep.
That defense is going to keep them in the game, and then the running game is going to keep the ball away from Canadian. I just think that the Canadian offense is so explosive that I don't think that as good as the Big Sandy offense was, I don't think they can keep up. Yeah. And I think that's where I would go. I would lean towards 2015 Canadian over 1973 Big Sandy.
Fair enough.
You can vote on TexasFootball.com. Tell us what we think, or tell us what you think, because what we think doesn't really matter. So let us know. TexasFootball.com. By the way, we didn't mention last week we did have a winner when we had our it was 1998 Stephenville against 2003 Galena Park North Shore.
Run away.
Was it? I didn't see the margin.
Stephenville won by I think it's 85% to 15.